India is being devastated by the second wave of the coronavirus, with hospitals running out of beds and oxygen, people queuing outside clinics gasping for air, and mass cremations taking place outdoors to cope with the pressure on crematoria. As nations lend support to India and share its pain, China mocked its humanitarian crisis. This is particularly disheartening when we consider that India was one of the first countries to send medical supplies to China after the world learned that there had been a viral outbreak in Wuhan. Stay with me to find out what China did this time and why. We'll also visit the unbelievable tactics China uses against its neighbor. We may all learn something valuable from it. I'm Sharon, and this is Straight Talk. A few days ago, on May the 1st, China launched a rocket carrying a core module of its first space station. A top Chinese Communist Party office, the Central Political and Legal Affairs Commission, posted two photos on its social media accounts, side by side, showing the Chinese rocket launch with the field burning off in one photo and thick smoke rising from mass outdoor cremation pyres in India in the other. The title reads, China lighting a fire versus India lighting a fire, and is accompanied by a hashtag that reads, daily newly confirmed COVID-19 cases in India have surpassed 400,000 a day. The post shocked even netizens in China. A blogger wrote on WeChat, I apologize to Indian people on my own behalf. The post doesn't represent me. We live on the same planet. We feel your sufferings. The blogger's post has since been deleted. Ironically, the CCP office posted the pictures and comments after Chinese President Xi Jinping phoned Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to express his condolences over the loss of life and his concern for the welfare of the Indian people. The offensive post was eventually removed after a number of Western media outlets picked up on it. Some might think the post was a careless mistake, but unfortunately, it was far from an isolated incident. China Digital Times is an organization based in California that tracks digital activities in China. It reported that several official accounts, including the Chinese Police Online, also posted pictures mocking India's fight against the epidemic. What is interesting, however, is that China had been the loudest and the harshest voice criticizing the United States for not coming to India's aid fast enough. President Joe Biden initially hesitated to lift an export ban on vaccine ingredients, though he agreed several days later after Indian vaccine makers pleaded for help. If you only read the news from China, you would be absolutely convinced that the West, led by the United States, had abandoned India and that China was the only country that rushed to help. One Chinese paper called the US an unreliable partner that treats India like a pawn to be discarded like a used tissue when no longer useful. What is China trying to achieve here? Well, China's communist regime is obviously playing the game and trying to drive a wedge between India and the United States. It is engaging a perception war in which China will appear to be a strong and resourceful global leader. Mocking Indian cremation sites was just a slip of the tongue. Unfortunately, there have been too many such slips in the past, and the distrust is too deep for India to overcome. So while China repeatedly offered to help, the Indian government's responses have been rather muted. And the Indian government has got the people on their side. A poll from last August shows that nearly 60% of Indian people supported their countries going to war with China to resolve border tensions, while more than 90% backed banning Chinese apps and denying contracts to Chinese companies. And what did China do to help India? Put simply, some things you wouldn't believe. Are you ready? While China lashed out at the United States for not acting sooner, China's state-run Sichuan Airlines announced on April 26 that it was suspending all cargo planes into India for 15 days due to fears of importing the Indian variant of the virus back to China. Sichuan Airlines' decision significantly disrupted the already frantic efforts of Indian companies to source much-needed medical supplies. The flights resumed the following day when the United States started sending medical supplies to India. On April 28th, Russia decided to fly 22 tons of emergency supplies to India. According to Indian media, 2 plane loads marshaled by the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations had already landed in New Delhi by first light the next day. It took until the 28th of April for China to realize that they were now lagging behind. The Chinese ambassador to India and a foreign minister took to Twitter to announce their rescue effort. Of course, they made no mention of the on-again, off-again ban on cargo flights implemented by China's state-owned airlines. Indian media also reported that Chinese manufacturers had jacked up their prices by 35 to 40%, and that freight charges had also jumped by over 20%. India branded China's rescue efforts as damage control because they're not buying the Chinese narrative of just wanting to help. It is like when you have been bullied for years by the big kid next door, and then all of a sudden this boy wants to help you. You'll be right to be on your guard. When it comes to bullying, China knows no bounds. Many of you may have heard about the border clashes between China and India in the Himalayas in June of last year, in which dozens of soldiers died. It was the worst skirmish between the two countries in decades. That month, India also saw over 40,000 attempts to inject malware into the computer system, controlling its electricity networks. A US-based cybersecurity firm found that a China-linked group called the Red Echo was behind the surge. The cyber attacks were a warning from Beijing to New Delhi. If India did not stand down in the border confrontation, China would turn off the lights across the country. India sent more troops to the border in the following months, and guess what happened? In October, its biggest city, Mumbai, had its worst power cut in decades. The stock market was shut down, thousands of commuters were stranded, and this while the city was in the middle of a pandemic. When it comes to disputed borders, China is happy to resort to unconventional methods, for lack of a better term. The communist regime has implemented the same tactics in the Himalayas that it uses in the South China Sea. China quietly built over 600 villages with military facilities in the disputed area close to the Indian border in an attempt to change the landscape so that they can unilaterally claim the area as theirs. In a similar fashion, China has created artificial islands by building military infrastructures on coral reefs in the South China Sea. They later claimed that those areas around those artificial islands belong to China. Doing so has allowed China's communist regime to make incremental advances over time, with each move not being serious enough to provoke a war, while at the same time extending their claim over more territory without even firing a shot. There's another issue people in the West might not be aware of, one that may have caused even more Indian animosity toward China. Many rivers in India have their source in the Tibetan plateau inside China's modern-day borders. And how has the CCP behaved toward their neighbors downstream? They have leveraged and weaponized this advantage. To this day, China has refused to enter into a water-sharing treaty with any downstream country. Instead, they have built numerous dams upstream that have disturbed the water flows and resulted in flooding and droughts in downstream countries, negatively impacting the livelihood of people across South Asia. As recently as March, the CCP approved a plan to build its biggest dam yet on the Brahmaputra River just before it enters India. This river is a lifeline to millions of people living downstream in India and Bangladesh. Their lives and livelihoods depend on it. To China, it means leverage rather than responsibility. Worse yet, the pending construction is in an area prone to earthquakes. Given China's track record in infrastructural megaprojects, the dam will impose a great threat to the safety of Indian citizens. And did the Chinese bother to consult with India on the dam? No. In 2017, India announced that it will boycott the inaugural summit of the Belt Road Initiative. China retaliated by refusing to share data on those rivers that rise in Tibet and flow through India. Such upstream data is crucial to enable early warnings while flooding. Although it resumed the data sharing in 2018, deaths in the downstream Indian state of Assam had already been caused due to the crippled warning system. How can a country be a world leader or a responsible member of the international community if it puts its political agenda above human lives every time? It was great to see that India was invited to the high table of G7 in London last week. At a time when the Democratic Alliance is formulating strategies against the Chinese Communist regime, India's presence is important not only because of its economic potential, but also its deep understanding about China and its commitment to sovereignty and its values. I will stop here for today. Please share it and like it if you have enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss future episodes. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.